well.
I talked to him about 15 minutes ago, and he said he would be here. He might be caught up in a phone call or something, though. So,
Okay, well, we'll get started here. Welcome to the pre-meeting. It's been a while since I've said that. For the Planning Commission meeting for tonight, October 20th, 2020. By all accounts, I think this is our last one that we have to do over video chat. I think next time we can actually be in person if we want to, but we can discuss that later. Really quickly, let me just get this bit of business out of the way, then we'll get started into our pre-meeting agenda. Due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan Planning Commission has determined that conducting this Planning Commission meeting at the City Hall or another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-2074, the West Jordan Planning Commission hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire 30 days from the date the chair of the Planning Commission signs the written determination. Okay. With that out of the way, we'll go ahead and proceed into our agenda. Just really quickly, want to recognize we have 6 members of the Planning Commission present. Currently, Commissioner Shelton is not present. First item we have up is to discuss the minutes. So is there any discussion or conversation regarding the minutes? Excellent. Next one is the Soda Blast. This is a continuation from our previous meeting. Any questions on here? I wonder if what we're going to be able to do with this tonight. Any thoughts on this, guys? Ammon, you were the one that had a lot of thoughts on this one last time.
I was just to say, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, you know, it's funny. I went through the agenda yesterday, and I saw Soda Blast. I'm like, oh yeah, I already know what's going on with this one, and I forgot that I actually should have looked at it to see if we had rearranged the thing. So I actually haven't looked at the new diagrams yet. So why don't you start while I kind of peek at this?
Well, so there are four new options that I suggested to staff based on my understanding of what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Some of that comes from everybody's input, as well as an improvement to the one north-south access that we discussed, where there's a little bit more of a curbing, some walkways. I think that actually looks really nice now, aside from I'm still very uncomfortable with it being directly in front of the building. But when we move into, it's page 8 on the staff report that I'm looking at here, we have 4 different options that are all moving a little bit, well, more to the west, and then some form of various loops and things. The 4th option just isn't going to work at all on there. So I think we table that one just because of the way that the pickup window is set up. You'd have a passenger side driving up to the pickup window. And this is all on me. This isn't staff. This is one of the 4 that I suggested. So I think that one get dropped, but I do like the ideas, at least of the other 3. I'd love to hear the owner, if they've had an opportunity to talk to the adjoining parcel, where they have to extend a little bit into those areas. But otherwise, I like those. I also feel better about the north-south one, the first option from last time.
Anybody else have any questions that they specifically want to address in this scenario? I like the discussion, but we're going to want to repeat a lot of that, Ammon, when we get to the main part of the meeting here.
I just have one
but
question.
I like the thoughts. Any other thoughts, you guys?
Yeah, I just have one question. I'm looking at those pictures that Ammon just referred to. And it looks to me like they, on the bottom of page 8 and the top of page 9, it looks like to me like they're coming in from in front of the other building and making a hard right and then working to the drive-up window. And they've actually changed the access to the parking lot and put in curb and gutter. I actually like the last two just because I think it creates, well, yes and no. I mean, I see how it's very creative, and I think it does solve a problem, pedestrian access and pedestrian accidents. So am I seeing that right? Who is it, Larry? Who has this one? Who?
Yeah, Commissioner Hatch. So you're referring to options 3 and 4.
Correct.
Right? On page 9 and 10. Oh, 8 and 9. I'm sorry. So that would be options 1 and 2, it looks like.
They're the options where you've created the remove parking stalls, keep the landscape island, and there's little wiggly lines all around it. And then there's an arrow going in on the west.
That's options 1 and 2. So, yeah, so with those options, they would be coming in. So with option 1, they'd be coming in from the west. And then option 2, they'd be coming in from that south. Both of those would basically head east. And so they would exit out by those dumpsters there.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Could I ask a clarification maybe before we go into the meeting? There's a lot of room here for miscommunication when we're talking about options. I was running through very similar to what Commissioner Hatch was suggesting and just going in order in the document 1, 2, 3, 4. But I do recognize that 3, 4, 5, and 6 in that order actually are listed out as options 1, 2, 3, and 4 if you look at the text directly underneath the picture. Is there a preference to which one we do? I don't know if I care as long as we're consistent so we don't have that miscommunication.
Well, I think as the pictures are labeled option 1, option 2, I think we just refer to those as 1, 2, 3, etc. Because everything preceding option 1 was what was previously discussed in our last meeting, correct?
Correct.
Save the additions of the menu board and the stop sign that were added to the picture on page 7 there. Is there anything else as far as discussion, like clarification goes? I think a lot of this discussion we can have, upstairs. I'm going to use the air quotes because typically we go upstairs. I don't want to have too much more discussion on this. We've had a lot of discussion on this one already, and I don't want to have too much down here that we really need to be having in the public portion of this meeting. So I like the discussion though. Let's keep that going. Unless anybody has any objection, let's move on to public hearing number 1. So item number 2 on our agenda tonight is the Udall commercial. Mr. Page, you want to give us a quick rundown on this, just a high level for us? Is Kent not on? I can't hear him.
He's trying.
Okay.
So I'll give you a rundown until Kent's able to get on. But this is a piece that's right next to a piece that Peterson owns, or across the street from where the new health or HC clinic will be going in the next year. And so it's currently zoned very low residential. And it's right next to the loop road that comes off the roundabout coming from behind Smith's and across 56 West. And so what they're proposing is they want to rezone this to community commercial. And I think with all the commercial activity that's going on in that corner right now, 56 West and 78, that I think that this is a good application, and as staff, I support this change to the land use map and the zoning map, because I think it'd be a good area for commercial right next to that road. And then it's far enough away. The more retail will be more centered or more approximate to 5600 West. And I've talked to the Udalls, and their thought is to put an office back along 5490, so it's not so impactful on the residents. And Kent's back, so I'll let him take over. So.
I've got one question as you're coming on, Kent. So the applicant kept referring to one building and one restaurant, and I see 6 buildings on the concept plan. What are we really doing here?
The concept plan has 2 pads for restaurant and I believe 6 for professional office.
So ultimately, they want one big restaurant with a drive-up lane and 6 smaller buildings.
Well, or two restaurant pads.
They might do 2 restaurants there.
Or 2 more tire shops.
Oh, please, no more tire shops. I don't even live out there, and I'm already tired of seeing tire shops out there.
How about a car wash?
What about storage units? I had 2 phone calls on those today. So. Oh, but ours are so much better looking. So.
A storage unit is still a storage unit.
I actually really like what they've proposed here. I think this is a good mix. It's a good buffer to the houses that are a little bit to the east. I know if I lived there, I'd be much happier with this than having more 1-acre lots right by my house. With more people bringing in their animals and such. So we're super chatty tonight, guys.
No, I like it as well because I live over here, so I'm always in this area, and I think that's a really nice addition.
Okay.
5490 isn't the private roadway, isn't it? It is.
Yes.
But only part of it or all of it?
It's currently private. A portion is completely private, public, but a good portion is private.
Well, everything wrapping around or everything adjacent to this site will be public from out to Loop Road out to 78 South. Peterson's dedicated, and it's actually, I think, been constructed now. And so they won't be entering into the private road area at all. So,
yes, staff has recommended that the 5490 be improved and dedicated as a public street once it's developed or subdivided.
Okay. Any other questions? We've got 3 text amendments, and I'm imagining that we've got some training today.
Yeah, brief training. Usually we do our training on the first meetings, but I do have one thing I want to bring up really quickly with the Planning Commission tonight.
Right, let's just jump in really quickly. Anybody have questions about any one of the 3 text amendments, or can we wait till we're upstairs to move through these ones? I'd prefer to give Larry and Duncan a little bit of time to do their training.
And so I'll just jump in real quick on the text. Okay. It's all what they really are is to facilitate one large development and another development to be able to be approved. Developments of both the Planning Commission is already saying, which is Jones Ranch, and I can't remember the apartments over by
Jordan Fields.
Jordan Fields. So that's what this is all about, is to make language so the city council can have a little more discretion or a little more latitude on on making of recommendations in the development plan or approving the development plan. That's what it's all about. So.
Even though the text amendments are technically citywide applicability, obviously they are helping to facilitate developments. And then the third text amendment is one is more at the initiative or request of the council to basically change procedural timing rules. There used to be some 20-day rule that something could not go from the planning to the commission to the council quicker than 20 days, especially map amendments. And the council would like to see that rule removed, so there's a little more flexibility, and they'd like to deal with that in their council rules rather than in the actual ordinance like it is currently. So,
What was the reason for that originally?
I think what it was is it was all a part of 4 years or so ago. There were a lot of changes to the general plan map that were occurring on a constant basis. And some of them were almost then that were next to each other that maybe were a few months apart. One would be granted, the other wouldn't. And the whole idea was, why don't we see all of these general plan map amendments together as a group, so that if some of them are in the same place or similar, they can be decided together. So ever since that time, we've had what's called quarterly map amendment meetings, where typically you see all the general plan map amendments once per quarter. Sometimes they don't all fit on one agenda, they're spread out, but they all come in and they're kind of seen and screened as a group once every 3 months. And as part of, and that process actually has worked really well, but as part of that change, the other thought was to give enough time for map amendments as they go from the planning commission to the council. And it's too hard to turn them around within 1 week, because if the planning commission has a change, how can the council see it a week ahead when the planning commission just barely approved it a week ahead? And so the idea was there should be a 1 week or a 1 meeting wait, which means council sees it 3 weeks later instead of 1. But at any rate, the council doesn't see the need for that part of the rule anymore. So they'd like to just, and their main rule that they're going towards anyway is a 2-week rule with their council rules, where they want to see a complete packet 2 weeks in advance of the meeting for land use issues. But they want to deal with it in their council rules rather than in the city ordinance.
Perfect. Any questions? Do you guys want to follow up here, or can we hang on to them until we're upstairs? Okay. Larry, do you want to take the lead on the training?
And so what I wanted to talk about tonight is it's really not a substantive issue, but it's more of a procedural issue for the Planning Commission, which will help staff out enormously. And so it's nothing that's written in ordinance or anything like that, but it's a good practice to follow. And so when we have an application or an applicant present to the city council, and then staff presents, that's usually the way it goes: applicant, then staff, and then it's usually opened up to the Planning Commission for questions. If we could keep those initial questions after the 2 presentations, just clarifying about the application and not so much as the design or the nature of the application. If it's just something you need clarified that the applicant said or the staff said, then that would be what we should do, and then have the public hearing. And then after the public hearing is when the Planning Commission can really get into the application. For instance, the soda shop tonight would be a good one to wait until, although we're not having a public hearing, but hypothetically be a good one to wait until after the public hearing to start talking about the design issues and your concerns and what you want to see changed, because that helps staff out. And the way it helps staff out is that then we can track exactly where you're talking about where you want to see changes in the development or changes to the conditional use permit. That then it keeps that a little more condensed, and staff is able to understand more what you want, where if it comes before and then after a lot of those items, we're not quite sure if they're clarifying questions or if you actually have a concern with the development. And so that's what we would like to see. Duncan, do you have anything you want to add to that? Or
Yeah, I do. It comes down to what the main purpose of a public hearing is. And that really is two reasons. The first reason we hold public hearings is to give information to the public. And the second reason we hold public hearings is to get information from the public. And so the first part of that is the two presentations that Larry was describing is we're basically giving enough information to the public in addition to what's posted online for the public to make an intelligent comment, right? So we need to be clear about the facts and the nature of the application. Nothing more. We don't want to taint it with our substantive questions or how we ought to react to it, but simply nail down the actual facts and nature of the application. Then, like I say, hear from the public in the public hearing, hear their questions, concerns, and issues. Then after all that's done, in a perfect world, then you as a planning commission then proceed to start asking more substantive questions and looking into the pros and cons and how you want to act on it. Ultimately, your discussion should also focus on, does it meet the terms of the ordinance or not? If it does meet all the terms of the ordinance, obviously you're going to grant the application. If it does not meet the terms of the ordinance, then obviously you're not going to grant it, or you're going to give the applicant a chance to fix the application so it does comply. So that's basically it. I think we just kind of focus on what the purpose of the public hearing is and give information to the public, then hear from them, and then after that, then start discussing it as a
one thing I would add to that, Duncan, tell me if I'm wrong, but we want to also make sure that we're not including comments before the public hearing, such as I would or would not be in favor of this, the way it's presented.
Correct.
Simply because we're trying not to sway what kind of comments might be coming from the public. We
don't want to. Exactly. We don't want to prevent or discourage comments from the public, which could be helpful to you if they already know which way you're leaning. Exactly.
yeah.
If I might say something.
Please, Mayor.
I think it's important that we hold our decision and opinions until after you hear from the public. Otherwise, the public's going to think, why should we come and share it? Because you made up your mind before you heard what I had to say. Part of our responsibility is hear what they have to say. They provide us with information we may not have had, and that should be taken into account on the decision we make. If we make the decision before we hear from them, then we're not listening to what they have to tell us, and that's the whole purpose of that being there.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
I'd like to have you give me one or two examples of questions that would be appropriate to ask the presenter at the time they're done.
Yeah.
I know you said they should be directed toward what they had already said. Maybe just give me an example or two so that I can clarify that in my mind.
I think that if the presenter gets up and says, well, I want to open this doll shop right here and this road over here, and I think it's appropriate for you to ask them, which roads are you talking about? Does this road run through a residential area? Just clarifying questions, anything that you need to formulate your opinion later on. So if they're not being clear, then I would certainly ask them to clarify what they mean or what they're asking. And you certainly can always do that to staff if the presenter has left you feeling confused with the presentation. Then I would ask, now I'm a little confused on this part. What exactly are you saying? That's what we mean by that. Rather than coming right out and saying, I really hate your project. I wish you would go away. I wouldn't do that until after the public hearing, and then you can say that kind of thing. But no, just joking. So it'd just be more clarifying than anything. That's what I think. Duncan and the mayor, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that or not.
No, I think it's good. If your questions are helping to accomplish those objectives, if it's helping to give information to the public so that they can understand better and then make better comments, then that's a great question. If it's more focused on what decision you might make, maybe that's the one you wait till later on. But like Larry said, factual questions: which streets, how many lots, what size, what are the facts? It has nothing to do with your decision, but clarifying the nature of the application and the types of numbers and facts, then you're in good shape.
Can I ask another question related to that?
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Last meeting we had, I had a specific question on the drive-through that they want to put in on the hair salon or at the hair college. And it was a question on the drive-through. Was there going to be a curb built, or was there going to be lines painted? Is that question specifically, would that be appropriate to ask the presenter, or is that more appropriate to wait until after?
Something that's related to design or the layout of a project, I would save until after the public hearing, unless it's just really not clear in your mind at all. You could ask, now, is there going to be a protecting curb here? You could ask that kind of thing, but rather than, we got into some extensive design discussions at the last meeting on the soda shop. So I'd probably leave any of that design stuff or your comments until after, and then staff can take those down diligently and hopefully, make sure they're incorporated into the plan. So yeah, before public hearing, clarifying if you're not understanding something. After is more of your opinions about design and that type of thing. So, okay. All right, and so our next training will be on November 17th, so we won't meet for a month. We may have a new president, or we may have the same president at that meeting. I don't know. Is there anything specifically that the Planning Commission wants us to prepare a training on? I know Matt and Corbin, you guys have been around the longest and have probably seen it all, but is there anything that was particularly helpful to you when you were a new planning commissioner?
I just want to acknowledge that I actually think Trish has been here the second longest. Just want to make sure she gets her due credit there.
Well, Trish, I avoided calling you old, but he forced me to do that. So
I said second longest tenured is what I said.
What was helpful to me, especially in light of one of the news stories last night, was open meeting rules and laws, and what we can and can't do, and just communication amongst each other might be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, Salt Lake City's in a big world of hurt right now.
Yeah, I was just reading through their emails. Ugly.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that. Don't know if
I missed that one.
Yeah,
Salt Lake City Board of Health or Board of Education.
We could go over that. We generally save that for the first of the year, so Duncan can get his required legal star on his forehead for doing the open meetings. But we can do that. But I think a good one that goes along with that is due process. So we can talk about due process and then go to the open meeting probably in January. So we'll do that. So that's when we traditionally do that.
It was helpful for me to do what's administrative and what isn't, and what we have power over and what we don't. That's helpful.
Okay.
There's your next two topics right there, Larry.
Got it. Thank you.
Or I guess your next three.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good through January now. We'll get all done.
Yeah.
All right, we are at 6 o'clock. So unless somebody else has something specific that they want to bring up in the pre-meeting, I will acknowledge that Commissioner Shelton joined us as we've heard him speaking. And then we'll go ahead and adjourn the pre-meeting and commence our actual planning commission meeting for tonight, October 20th, 2020. We now have all 7 members of the commission present, with members of staff as well as the mayor. Welcome to those who are in attendance, viewing as attendees as well. Before we get started, I just have one little thing that you all enjoy and come to hear me read. So just bear with me for a minute. Due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan Planning Commission has determined that conducting this planning commission meeting at the City Hall or another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-2074, the West Jordan Planning Commission hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire in 30 days from the date the chair of the Planning Commission signs the written determination. With that out of the way, we'll move on to our first item on our agenda tonight, which is item 1A in the business item section regarding the minutes from our meeting of October 6th. Any discussion or motions regarding this specific item?
I'll go ahead and approve the minutes from October 6th.
You want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for
I'm
October.
not sure you have the unilateral power to approve them by yourself. We have a motion by Commissioner Hatch,
I'll second those.
seconded by Commissioner England. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're unanimous there. Item number 1B of our business items is a continuation from our previous meeting of Soda Blast at 9066 South, 1510 West, conditional use permit for a restaurant. Mr. Forsyth, do you want to run through the quick changes on that for us?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So just to kind of refresh everyone's memory, this is the drive-through soda shop that we looked at last time. So this is going in on the south side of the Taylor Andrews Academy, just over on 5010 West and 9000 South. So just real quick, we've made some changes. Staff has been working with the applicant to make some changes to the on-site drive-through design and solution there. And so we've incorporated a couple of the suggestions from the Planning Commission from the last meeting. So some of those include, you can kind of see here, a 6-inch curb on both sides of that drive aisle, and then running at least 2 striped pedestrian areas or crosswalks through that drive-through to connect to the building so that pedestrians can get through there. And the third thing is just kind of showing the improvements required for signage. Basically, per our sign ordinances, we require signs to be located in a landscaped area. So we figured that if they had a 6-inch curb around those and fill it with gravel, we could consider that landscaping, and that would suffice and meet those requirements. So that's the on-site solution. The applicant did propose kind of an alternative if there's some concerns with traffic circulation. And so part of that was to add just kind of a horseshoe cut through, 2-way cut through just north of that drive aisle, or the drive-through, excuse me. In my opinion, I don't think that's really necessary, but again, it's just kind of a plan B in case traffic becomes a concern. But going back to this one, the plan for this, you can't really see the parking areas north of that entrance to the drive-through, but basically it's the same thing as this one, only without that without this. So the parking would remain north of that drive-through, remain completely intact. So now there are 4 other options that that have also been suggested. It's kind of based on the comments from last time, and continuing that drive aisle or that drive-through out to the west so that we maintain more pedestrian access here to the north. So now all 4 of these, I should point out that all 4 of these would cross onto the neighboring parcel, which is owned by Walker Edison Furniture. And so they would need to 100% approve those improvements in order for those to work. So that's kind of the key linchpin there. So I'll just kind of go through these real quick, but all 4 of these are calling for that same 6-inch curb on both sides of the aisle, and then just removing some of these parking stalls in the green area to kind of clean that up and make sure that parking's functioning sufficiently. And then to the north of that drive-through, again, we've got kind of that 2-way U-turn through there to make sure that traffic is functioning normally and doesn't just get cut off at some dead end there, and making sure that cars can get where they need to go. So this is the second option. Again, this is kind of gives a little longer length to that drive-through. That was the third option. Again, kind of giving a little bit longer. This option would require them to completely remove that landscape island. So it would be a bit of extra work there, but again, that's kind of one of the options. And then the fourth option would be to kind of have that run along the south side of the parking lot and make that turn. This turning radius kind of concerns me, especially coming off a pretty steep angle and with the pickup window being so close to that. So I'm not sure if that one would work, but again, there might be some options there. Maybe moving that pickup window further over or increasing that turn radius, or both would be an option there. Anyway, that's just kind of an update since the last meeting, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
All right, any questions for staff? And pursuant to our previous conversation, we've already held public hearing on this, so we can discuss this at length now.
I have one question, Chair. Actually, several questions. I apologize.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Option 1, more for staff. Is that long enough to meet the code? Is it
Yeah,
9?
so we looked at the stacking requirements, and yeah, it just barely has enough.
Okay, so that would be an option. And then
Well,
option
really quickly, while we're on that one, Evan, is that one going to infringe upon Walker Edison's right of way there? That one also requires their approval?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Go ahead.
Option 4, I agree with you, Mr. Forsyth. It's not going to work for not only the turn radius, but it also puts the passenger window up against the pickup window. So,
Correct.
My bad. That was not an option to begin with. Thank you for entertaining it.
Okay, all options are on the table, so.
We'll make it really fun. I really like something that Commissioner Hatch mentioned regarding options 1, 2, and 3. And that is, staff shows on the north side of that, pushing back a few of the parking spaces and creating that movement. I'm wondering if we can do the same for the parking stalls to the west. Also move that one up and create a full access through there.
Yeah, you could do that. It would remove a few parking stalls, but yeah, they do have enough parking there, that they could still meet the required parking.
I thought the issue there was that they only had control over the first bank of parking stalls, and anything else beyond that has to have approval from some master body or somebody else. And so I don't know that putting a drive aisle any further west of that first one there is something that we can just make a decision on unilaterally without them getting permission first.
Correct. Yeah. Again, that's located on the Walker Edison parcel, and so they would have to fully approve that.
Okay. And I agree with that entirely. It's part of the dialogue. My recollection was in the background memo, or perhaps it was in the minutes from the last discussion, that the applicant had suggested they had the first 4 banks, not including the one immediately in front of the building. And so maybe I'm off on that. Could you clarify?
Yeah, I'm having trouble recollecting that. I don't know if the applicant's here that they could possibly speak to that, or.
I am here. We own obviously in front of our building, and then the first row, which is the 2. And then I believe the next row begins our common area.
Yeah, so if that's common area, then they can't just make that decision on their own.
Right.
Right. Only option 1 is the only one we can do without getting everybody's approval. The other options would take us to get everybody's approval.
Maybe a question from the applicant. As you've talked to staff and worked through some of these options, have you talked to the neighboring owner and kind of ferreted that out?
They have not moved in yet. I've only communicated through email. I did send him these options and told him which one we were leaning towards, option 1. I have not heard a response from him.
I have a question about option 1.
Commissioner Allen, are you done?
I am. I'd love to hear some things
right.
from you.
Commissioner Shelton.
On option 1, it has a kind of a squiggly line in red outlining a green area. Would that be a landscape? Is that indicating where landscaping would take place?
No, so that would be just the area where they're removing parking stalls. So the landscaping that's already there would remain completely intact. They're just taking out those parking stalls because with the curb there, there'd be no way for cars to really use them.
So it would just be blacktop?
Pretty much, yeah.
In the green area?
Yeah, they would just sandblast it out.
But there's no access at all to that area for parking purposes?
Not feasibly, no, because these parking stalls would likely be blocked by any overflow traffic. That's a non-starter. I mean, there's no way you can get a car in there feasibly the way those are situated. These might be possible to keep those. This one, probably not. So you may be able to get 1, maybe 2 there, but, and then obviously the others on this side, that would be taken up by the drive-through. So those would have to be taken out. Does that make more sense?
I'm not understanding why you can't just restripe it and make it more useful.
I think you possibly could. I'd have to look at the width of the drive aisles, but they may be too narrow to accommodate 90-degree parking.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
I do have a question. On the originally proposed version of this, as I'm reading through the updated notes, it says that you have made the changes to include curbing on both sides, plus we've got the signage. Am I reading that correctly and understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so that's referring to this option here. So this is just kind of showing the improvements needed for the menu boards and the stop sign.
Correct, but
as well as the curb. So the black line here represents that 6-inch curb on both sides.
Okay, that's perfect. That's what I wanted. So to me, if I'm just gonna just throw my thoughts out here, I am against 3 and 4 adamantly. Don't really like 2, just because I don't like to have to deal with 90-degree turns trying to get into a drive-up lane. And if we've got curbing on both sides plus signage that's marking everything that's going on here, I don't see why we have to make the applicant wait for any decisions from Walker Edison when we can just let them make improvements to their own property. This version right here that we see on the screen, this is the version I like the most. This is what I feel like we were asking for in the last meeting, was having curbing that prevents cars from entering and exiting without any concern. That's where I'm at.
I'll agree with
Chair,
that.
Chair,
I agree with that too. Especially since then you're not worried about the 6-car leeway too. I think it gives you a little bit more space for cars.
I think with this particular option, now that we have the curb as well as some of the other items that were placed in here, this meets the safety requirements that we would be looking for, in my opinion.
I feel comfortable with that also.
I personally like option 1 that we were looking at, the straight line, but given that it would require someone else's approval who may or may not like it, I think the option that we're looking at on the screen now is probably the best way to go.
Well, any other discussion here, guys? Can we make
How about a motion?
Please do.
I was just looking through the conditions of approval. I think they're all valid. There's some on there that are kind of like number 4, written consent from the property owner, kind of doesn't apply, but I don't see any harm in leaving it in there unless anybody has any heartburn over that. So with that, based on the information and findings set forth in this staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for Soda Blast located at 9066 South, 1510 West in a PC zone, with the conditions of approval listed on page 2 of this report. And what do we want to call this? Option number 1.
We'll call it staff option.
Staff option number 1.
Yeah,
The original option.
I'll second that. We have a motion by Commissioner England, seconded by Commissioner Quinney. Any discussion to the motion?
1, so on the conditions of approval, number 2 is shall be constructed to the specifications shown on one of the site plan options provided in this report. Should we amend number 2 to dial it back to either just this option, staff option 1, or staff option 1 and other option 1? Or all the other options out the door, and this is the only one we're focused on? I'm perfectly fine with any of those.
Mr. Murray, what do you think?
I'd like to give the owner multiple options if they prefer a different option, like their option number 1 that they presented. If they can get permission from the other property owner, why not allow them to do it?
Yeah, it's up to you as to how you'd want to frame your motion, but you definitely ought to take into account the desires of the applicant.
Yeah, that's my whole thought, is if the applicant has desires to go with that more straight approach in the drive-through, why not allow them to do that if we can?
The applicant stated in her earlier testimony, if you will, that they were leaning towards the original option that they've amended with the menu board and the stop sign. That was the option that they were leaning towards.
I'd missed that. So if that's what they prefer, then let's let them do it.
So,
Yes, that's what we prefer.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, if we say all we're doing is approving the application, they get to choose out of these 5 options, and I think we all know where we're going to go with it. So I don't see any reason to be limiting. Corbin, what do you think? Are you okay with?
I think condition 2 needs to read: the drive-through lane shall be constructed to the specifications shown for staff's option number 1, provided in this report.
I'm okay with that. Any other discussion to the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you for your patience while we got this worked out. I think we've got a really good solution here and look forward to seeing the grand opening there.
Thank you so much for your help.
Yep, enjoy the game.
Thanks.
Moving on to our first public hearing is Udall Commercial, 7592 South, 5490 West, future land use map amendment for 5.01 acres from very low density residential to community commercial, and a rezone from RR1D to SC2 Community Shopping Center Zone, Udall International. David Udall, you are the applicant, I'm assuming. I think I saw you here. Yep. The floor is yours, sir. Just for the record, we're going to have two different recommendations as we do this, guys. So just make sure that you're aware of that fact that we've got two recommendations. As soon as we get you unmuted, I think you're ready to go. There you go.
Can you see us? We can't see us, but
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
start video.
Okay.
There we are.
There you go. Hey, look at you guys.
Hey.
You're all fancy.
Yeah, we want
What
to
happened?
look fancy.
Can you see?
It's not the opera, but we appreciate the gesture anyway.
We can't see you guys now. I don't know what happened.
Uh-oh. We're all here, I assure you. The floor is yours. Please share what you've got for us.
Okay, we appreciate having this time to speak with you guys. We've been impressed as we watched you on the pre-meeting that you're really conscientious people and you're trying to make your community the very best you possibly can. And so that's really impressive. I'm going to let my wife start out with, her name's Laurel, and she's going to start out on this presentation. And so, Laurel.
Okay. Sorry we can't see you guys.
Can you even hear?
Can you hear us?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Can
We
you see
lost
us?
you for a minute, but now we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Can you see us?
Yes.
Okay, we can't see you, but anyway, we have to really extend our thanks to Kent Page, who's been wonderful to work with in this whole process. He's been a marvelous worker, and we really are thrilled that the city has developed that Highland Loop Road, which is the roundabout from our lot that comes right down the property between us and Peterson's. We're very, very grateful for that new development of that Highland Loop Road.
Yes.
We're thrilled to know that we did some research about West Jordan. We've had this property in our family since 1977, and it has been zoned as residential 1-acre lots. And now it's become a booming place for business with a population of over 116,000. And I guess West Jordan is the fourth most populous city in Utah with over 3,000 business licenses. We were thrilled to hear that the economic development statement was that you welcome all businesses, large and small, and that the economic development team works to attract new businesses and foster this environment. And so for this reason, we are here requesting two things: a rezoning to commercial from residential. And also we're requesting that we have an amendment map, planned map amendment in place. The proposed amendment conforms to and is consistent with the adopted goals, objectives, and policies set forth by the city's general plan. We're really appreciative of the planning and details that has gone into work for the city of West Jordan. You guys have done a tremendous job. The development pattern contained in the land use map plan adequately provides the appropriate optional sites for this use. And what we propose, if you've read the notes, is that we propose to put in a fast food restaurant at the right off
Loop Road.
the Loop Road and 5490 West.
No, that's
Oh.
the Loop Road.
The Highland Loop Road.
Yeah, 5490 West is a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
And we also want to propose a second plan of developing professional office spaces closer to the 5490 West Road. And we think that by developing professional office space, that will serve as an adequate buffer for the residential residents of West Jordan, because generally speaking, professional office buildings are closed on holidays and weekends, and their hours are shut down by about 5 p.m. So we don't anticipate a lot of traffic. And so the master plan has 4.73 acres of ours. And we've donated some of that on an additional, I think it's 0.23, Kent, you can correct me, that we're donating as the roundabout and whatever the city needs for their land. The proposed amendment includes developing fresh barren land and construction of this new facility, including a restaurant, professional office building. We want to propose to amend the master plan to create a variety of dining options and create more amenities that will attract and accommodate the residents of West Jordan. West Jordan is a wonderful community with a growing population. The future, such as the big Amazon warehouse that's gone in, and it's important that we serve the needs of the residents of West Jordan by building a fast food restaurant and a professional building on our lot, rather than just keeping it vacant, barren land. We would provide necessary businesses that this city needs. This project, we hope, will be an economic boost and driver in West Jordan for both economic activity that has a residual impact on other businesses, but also an important tax revenue source for the city of West Jordan, which in turn helps keep property taxes lower, hopefully, and a benefit for all residents of West Jordan. It would also provide useful employment for many. Some of the items that should be considered are enhancement of the West Jordan property and its surrounding neighborhoods, impacts of the proposed concept plan and surrounding neighborhoods, and the economic development such as sales tax, property tax, commercial tax, residual economic impact on local businesses. The 2012 master plan is wonderful, and it's entitled under codes containing a provision that allows the master plan agreement to be amended if both the city and the developer mutually agree to amend the agreement. We as property owners are petitioning you guys, the city, to amend the agreement, which leaves vesting rights under the 2012 West Jordan City zoning ordinances instead of the current zoning code. The city is under no obligation to amend this agreement, but we're proposing that you do so. So like I said, it's 4.73 acres, and we want to develop it in 2 phases. We have more if you want us to, or if you have questions for us.
You said 2 phases?
Probably.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicants? Cool. All right, thanks guys. Hang around. We will give you some time to respond to any potential comments that come from our public hearings. So just hang out for a little bit.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and turn the time over to Mr. Page.
Thank you, Chair. So the general plan calls for this property to be very low residential. And the general plan says that very low residential should be a buffer, ideally between higher density residential and dedicated and improved open space. So if I can share the screen here. So here's an aerial view, just to give you orientation of, here's 7800 South and Smith's and 5600 West. And
I'm not seeing your screen.
Not yet.
okay, should we try that again?
Let's do it. We're cheering for you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing the option of sharing screen.
We also lost our applicants.
Okay. Well, I think verbally I can communicate what we need to. The general plan calls for this very low residential to be a buffer between higher density single family residential and dedicated open space. And so to the east, we do have higher density residential. And to the north, we have some future open space, but it's not dedicated by any means right now. The current conditions, as we can see, is where we have some higher density multifamily residential to the south, and then we have a lot of community commercial zone property to the southwest. And then on the east side, we have lower density residential. So it seems like the land uses around this property have changed, whereby changing the land use map from very low residential to community commercial makes sense. And rezoning the property from rural residential 1 acre property to community commercial also makes sense due to the development of the property to the south and to the west particularly. Staff has asked the applicant to provide a utility analysis to see what impact, potential impact the proposed concept plan would have on current utilities, particularly water and sewer. Our utilities manager, Tim Heron, has looked at the proposal, and his opinion is that we do have adequate capacity for water and sewer to develop the proposed concept plan. Staff also highly recommends or wants to make the message clear that when this property, if this property is subdivided and developed, then the 5490 street needs to be fully dedicated as a public street and improved with water and sewer. So I'd be glad to answer any particular questions you have at this time.
Did you say the whole street has to be dedicated or just from this parcel south?
Well, for their portion of the street.
Their portion, okay.
Yes.
So their frontage, basically, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that. Any other questions for staff?
How does that dedication play into there's a statement that we're talking about improvement, including sewer of the frontage as well. If we're only doing frontage adjacent to their property, you're not requesting that they install sewer for just that portion of it, are you?
When it comes time to development, yes, that is the recommendation of staff.
When it comes time to development?
Correct.
Okay, so I
Commissioner Allen, let me
Go ahead.
clarify. That's only if there's not sewer in the road, and if they need to do whatever they need to do to be able to hook up to that line. And so with the road dedication and construction, there will also become the obligation to put in any infrastructure that is needed for their development and to complete any infrastructure that is on master plans. So that's generally the way the city gets most of its infrastructure installed, is through this way. Now, this happens to be a narrow piece of property, but we still require that some type of utility be installed to serve the development. So.
And Kent, did you mention the reimbursement or pioneering agreement along the Highlands Loop Road with Peterson's to the south?
No, I didn't. That was brought to my attention by Bill Baranowski that the Highlands Loop Road has been developed more on the property of the south than on the Udall property. So that reimbursement would need to be worked out between the developers of the Udall property and the developers of the property of the south.
Yeah, there's an actual recorded agreement, so we can get a copy of that to them. So
could I ask a clarification? Highlands Loop Road connects 5600 West with 5490 West. What I just heard is that the Udall properties on the north and the folks to the south have an agreement, and they need to handle out whatever cost needs to go in place for installing that road, as whatever, in addition to whatever utilities have to go in there too. What I'm still not 100% sure on is the 5490 west portion. So I understand that Udalls will have to dedicate a portion of where that 5490 west is to the city for public road in the future. And this is where this is where it stops for me. Are we going to have them install a sewer for that 100 feet or 200 feet, whatever that distance is, and cap both ends? Or do we already know that they've got to take that sewer out that direction and then north or south on 5490?
That hasn't been determined. It's just that utilities are available. And the only time we'd have them install a sewer is if it was on a master plan of some type. If there's no sewer master plan on there, then we wouldn't have them install that. Now, I happen to know that there is a sewer line running down the middle of 5490. And so all they would have to do is stub into that. They wouldn't be able to, there's no reason for them to build that line because it's already been constructed. So,
okay. Thank you for the clarifications. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
I'd like to ask about a road. The from 56th West, there's the roundabout there. It looks like the plan is to build a road going east and west there. Is that Highland Loops Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Julie, do you have the capability of showing the slides for the PowerPoint?
I'm looking at it on a second screen. Is that Highlands Loop Road? What property is that? Is that part of their property, or is that city-owned property? The property that's going to be used to build the road.
Yeah, that's been Highlands Loop Road. That's been dedicated to the public, but it came from the property to the south, not from the Udall's property.
Okay, any other questions to staff regarding what Mr. Page has shared with us that was in the application? Okay, let's move this to the plan or to the public hearing. Want to give the public a chance to there we go, to weigh in on this. So if you are here to discuss this specific item, the time is now yours. There is a little function. If you click into the participants section at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the option to, maybe, I can't see it on mine now, to raise your hand. You should be able to see an option to raise your hand. There it is. Raise your hand, and then we'll be able to see you do that, and we'll call on you, and we'll give you 3 minutes to go ahead and speak on this item. So the time is now yours. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Usually we get several visitors when we talk about this road, so I'm surprised to see that we don't have any tonight. We'll bring this back to the Planning Commission for further discussion. This would be the appropriate time to ask questions that you may have thought about that were not presented in the application by either the applicant or the staff, or a motion if someone's so inclined.
I have one.
Please.
I'd love to share a motion after that if everybody's on board. So the general comment is I really like it. I appreciate it. I think everything is going to be resolved. After all, the two things we're looking at right now are the amending the future land use map and then the zoning change. So I don't have a problem with either of those. I look forward to maybe future discussion on how things are arranged on this site. One thing I want to share with that is I would, in the letter from the applicant, they suggested that they might be putting a Chick-fil-A in this area. I'm 100% on board. It would be awesome to get another one out there. To that end, I have seen the Chick-fil-A at Jordan Landing with a line in excess of 400 feet from the drive-up window. Let's be really careful about not backing up onto that loop or onto the turnabout in this area. But if everybody's okay, I'd be happy to give the motion.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. I live over in this area, and sometimes it takes 10, 15 plus minutes just to get to Jordan Landing. So to have more options out here on this west side, I think is a smart move and exactly what this area needs.
I would just like to echo the concern about a long line at the Chick-fil-A that tends to back up there. We definitely need to look at that site plan and make sure it's done right if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, we'll definitely get another crack at this. Right now, we're just approving this based on a concept plan and a hope and a dream that they can get a Chick-fil-A. We'll be able to mitigate any of those potential concerns down the road, guys. So, but the concerns are definitely noted. Go ahead, Commissioner Allen.
All right, so based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend the future land use map on 5.01 acres of property located at 7592 South, 5490 West from very low density residential to community commercial.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Commissioner Shelton. Any discussion to this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, Commissioner Allen, you want to stab at the second one?
Yeah, staff does a great job of giving us that stab pre-written. So
yeah.
Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to rezone 5.01 acres of property located at 7592 South, 5490 West from RR1D, Rural Residential, 40,000 square foot lot, to SC2, Community Shopping Center Zone.
I second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Commissioner Bloom. Any discussion to this motion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. We are unanimous on both of those. David and Laurel, thank you for your presentation. We look forward to working with you guys further as this thing progresses. Moving along in our agenda for the evening, for our first text amendment of the night, this is our favorite part of the meeting. Item number 3 is the transit station overlay infill projects, amending the 2009 city code, adding section 13-6G-18, permitting limited flexibility for small infill developments in the transit station overlay district. Citywide applicability. City of West Jordan is the applicant. Mr. Forsyth, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
So just to give you a little bit of background on this, so the proposed ordinance amendment before you is a result of some back and forth discussions that we've had between staff, the City Council, and the developer for the Jordan Fields project. Basically, there were some conflicting interpretations of the ordinance, and really there wasn't a whole lot of give or take on either side. And so in order to kind of reach a consensus and move things forward and break the logjam, the land use subcommittee proposed amending or at least adopting a section to that TSOD ordinance to allow the City Council to have some limited flexibility when it comes to applying a lot of these ordinances in the TSOD, which initially were really kind of designed more for a larger multi-phase transit-oriented development similar to the Jordan Valley TOD. So basically what this ordinance says, or what this required, it's divided into 4 sections. So the first section essentially just grants the City Council the authority to waive specific ordinances for small infill developments, and it kind of defines what that is, and that's mostly referring, or well, it is referring to any lot or parcel in the TSOD that's 7 acres or less. So, then the second section essentially kind of provides some boundaries or some guidelines as to what this doesn't apply to. And so one of those is, and a lot of these sections are kind of based on some suggestions that we got from the city council and some of their concerns. So one of the first ones is there were some concerns that a developer might buy up a larger multi-phase development, start on one phase and say, well, this phase is less than 7 acres, so give me an exception for these TSOD ordinances. And so what this prohibition does basically doesn't allow them to do that. So, the other thing is it would prevent a developer from buying, say, like a 20-acre vacant property, subdividing just a small corner off of that that's less than 7 acres and saying, okay, well, give me an exemption now. So it kind of closes that loophole and make sure that legitimate infill properties that are, you know, surrounded by existing development and have some constraints associated with the size of the lot and what's around it, that those are applicable. So, then the third section really goes over how these exemptions should really be granted only on the individual merits of the development itself and shouldn't be used as a precedent for future development. So, so a developer in the future can't say, well, you gave Jordan Fields all these exemptions, so you should give me the same thing. Well, no, it doesn't quite work that way. It really has to be based on what's being proposed on that specific site. So, and then the fourth section just requires that that the sections that are waived or exempted or modified be listed in the master development agreement. So we did a little bit of a study on what parcels would be affected by this change, and you can kind of see here on the map that the parcels in blue, those are parcels that are less than 7 acres and have the potential for redevelopment. Some of these, particularly these lots here, kind of around the Jordan Valley Track Station, some of those are part of the Jordan Valley TSOD, but you can kind of see there's, even in some of the other areas, there's quite a few. So just for the simple numbers, I'll go through those real quick, but basically there's 140 acres of land that has development potential, and then 38% of all the land in the TSOD, or that acreage is 30% of all the land in the TSOD. And so the parcels that do have development potential, about half of those would be affected by the proposed ordinance. So yeah, you're basically looking at about 70 acres. So that's essentially it. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. Once again, just use the raise hand function down at the bottom of your participant screen. Let us know that you're interested in sharing your thoughts on this. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring this back to the Planning Commission for any further discussion or motions.
Chair, I got a couple questions.
Shoot.
First off, with this infill, does they still have to present this to the Planning Commission and or City Council?
Yeah, so this would, tonight you'd be making a recommendation to the City Council, either positive or negative, and then it would go to the City Council for a public hearing and business item on November 4th.
I know, okay, I maybe didn't.
So are you
clarify.
talking about if a new development comes in, Jay?
Exactly, now you know where I'm getting at.
Yeah, it would still have to come before the Planning Commission and City Council, so it doesn't change any of that, so.
Yeah, this isn't intended to change any of the procedure of who holds a public hearing and what order or anything like that. This text amendment simply provides some flexibility for parcels less than 7 acres that may not fit every single term of the current ordinance. That's the only effect of this ordinance. No change in procedure or process or which entity holds a public meeting or public hearing.
Okay, my fear still is that this might be an end run for some of the developers around some of the zoning laws and stuff right now.
There was a question that came up similar to what Jay is suggesting for me. And that was, he said that property or developer can't subdivide the property and then say, hey, this piece is less than 7 acres, so give us the exceptions. My question is, if a property is subdivided, but then subsequently sold to a new owner, would that new owner then become automatically eligible for the exceptions, or would they still be disqualified?
So if you read number A where it says applicable developments, the key phrase to focus on is may be waived by the City Council. And so, you know, I think the City Council is very astute at seeing through those things, and they will pick up on that. And so if somebody's trying to subdivide, come into staff and trying to subdivide a TOD piece just so they can get under the 7 acres, we'll catch up on that too, and probably wouldn't recommend approval of it. And so, yeah, it does grant some flexibility to the City Council, but they're going to have to convince the City Council of why it's a good idea to waive any of the requirements at all. So it's not an automatic by any means of the word. So
It's just allowing some flexibility when needed.
I like this. I think it's really been well thought out, and I think there's a lot of protections put in place. And with that, unless anybody's got anything, a motion. Anybody have anything else?
Please do.
I got to the bottom of the page. So here we go. Based on the information and findings set forth in this staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council concerning the addition of Section 13-6G-18 to the 2009 City Code, which permits the City Council to allow limited flexibility for small infill developments in the TSOD.
I'll second that motion.
Motion from Commissioner England, seconded by Commissioner Shelton. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
I had a nay. Who was that?
Jay.
Commissioner Thomas.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got that. So we are 6-1 with Commissioner Thomas casting the dissenting vote. That brings us to our next item, number 4, text amendment, amend the 2009 City Code Section 13-5C Plan Development Zones regarding open space and master development agreement requirements and residential density with citywide applicability. The city of West Jordan is again the applicant. Mr. McCandless, this one is yours.
Thank you. As Larry mentioned in the pre-meeting, this text amendment was initiated by the city council to give the council more flexibility to modify or waive certain open space and density requirements for what the in the zoning ordinance are called the planned development zones. So the city's planned development zones include planned community and then also the planned residential development zoning districts. So these proposed changes are to section 13-5C-2, which talks about the procedures for a zone change to a planned development designation. What I'm going to do is just share my screen here. Let's see if I can get the view. Try that again. Eric, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, let me just get into the slideshow here. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go down, I'll skip over this first section and then get right into what the council is looking at doing. Again, they would like to waive some of the requirements for density and open space in the PRD zone, and then also the planned community zone. Under section H here, it says the council authority to waive requirements. The city council may waive or modify density or open space requirements. But what they did is they put on some conditions on that. And first of all, the density in the PRD zone and what we call the planned residential zones may be modified by 15% of the overall density requirements. Staff added in the PRD zones because the city council already has the authority or ability to modify the density requirements to whatever is in the best is the best fit for that proposed development. But in the PRD zones, the density is actually set by what are called density buy-ups. So if the developer provides a certain number of recreational amenities or open space amenities, it changes the amount of density that they can have. So given that the council can already modify the PC zone densities, this really applies just to the PRD zones. And so what they'd like to be able to do is modify that by 15% of the overall density requirements. Under H2, the open space requirements, they're looking at reducing those from the required 20% open space to 17% of the gross area requirement. So this really applies to, I think, the PC or planned community zone, because in the PRD zone, you're required to have 15% in parks. But there's also that section as part of the density buy-ups that will allow for more density or for more open space to apply towards that increased density. So one of the modifications you may think about making in that open space requirements, section number H2 would be something like the open space requirements in the PC zone can be reduced from the required 20% to 17%. The other caveat to that is that any modifications of number 3 or waivers shall be based on specific findings, that the waiver modifications in the best interest of the city. And finally, that that any modification or waiver that's granted by the city council doesn't only applies to that specific development. It doesn't set precedents for other developments in the city. So that's kind of the crux of what the city council is proposing. The other thing that they are talking about doing is modifying section 13-5C-2, which is basically the process for zone change to a planned development designation. As some of you may recall, this has been, well, maybe none of you may recall, but several years ago, the city council basically did away with what we call our WSPA, or it's a West Side Planning Area Zone. And that's where the requirements for a master development agreement, master development plan are currently found. We recognize that the zoning code has some issues, but it was that the WSPA ordinance was actually left in the code because there are still some properties out there that are still zoned WSPA. So what the council did, given that they did away with the WSPA zone, and it's something that we as a staff will have to address in the future, is that basically this 13-5J-10 is that reference to that WSPA zone. So in order to just kind of clean that up a little bit, the council's recommending that reference to that the West Side Area Plan in 13-5J-10 be cut. So they are looking at removing the requirement for a master development agreement, but they are interested in keeping the master development plan intact. The other thing that comes into play in this is that I think if I'm not mistaken, Larry may want to correct me on this, but the council's had a problem with applicants providing kind of piecemeal applications. So they'll act on one item and then another part of it will come in later. And so in order to make things run more efficiently, the city council would like to see a complete application as part of that review process. So the applicant has to provide that complete application before it is brought up for action by either the planning commission or city council. So those are the changes that are proposed under this text amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So Ray, can I interrupt real quick? Can you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
Where it says H2 and 3, Duncan reminded me that the city council, let's see. Yeah, the council has to make that. So it's in the ordinance, but the council has to make the modification or the finding that this modification is in the best interests of the city. So it's not an automatic thing. And what that requirement does is it requires the city council to actually actively make a finding that, yes, this will be in the, this will help the city the most. And so I just wanted to make that point.
Which apparently in the Jones Branch development, they are willing to make that finding, but in another development, they may not want to make that finding.
On that next slide, Ray, it says that the application shall be presented to the Planning Commission. Does that require now that the MDP be submitted to the Planning Commission? Because before it was nice, but I don't think it was required, right? Is that now requiring that the MDP be completed before the Planning Commission ever hear this?
Yes, as a total, it does as a total package.
That's nice.
So that master development plan has to be included as part of that rezoning or future land use map amendment.
Yeah, so it really does put a lot of the onerous, the land use decision upon the planning commission. Now, I know that on a zone change, you're just a recommending body, but you will be reviewing these things a lot more intently in the future. So
I might make a suggestion that we dissect one of these as a training topic for another day. Any other questions or comments for staff? Okay, let's go ahead and open this up to the public. Once again, the time is yours. Just use the raise hand function if you've got something you want to share with us. And seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item, bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion, motion.
Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Please do.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve the proposed text amendment.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Hatch, seconded by Commissioner Bloom. Any discussion to the motion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we are unanimous on that one. All right, moving right along to our final item on the agenda.
Thank you.
One more, thank you, Ray. One more text amendment we're all excited about. Amending the 2009 City Code Section 13-7C and 13-7D as it relates to the 20-day provision with citywide applicability. The City of West Jordan is the applicant. Mr. Anderson, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you all. So as you've talked about the last couple code amendments or suggestions, one of the things that we've had in 4 sections of code has been a 20-day, well, it varies between a 10-day and a 20-day delay between a planning commission recommendation and before it comes to the city council. And in light of a couple of those, or the last item that you just discussed, you may recall that the council right now is desirous to have a full packet delivered to them. And with what Ray was saying as regards to the oh, and I've lost my train of thought, sorry. It's been a long day. What we're trying to do is put the responsibility on the developer to have everything ready so that there can be a discussion at the Planning Commission on land use. And then that same packet from the recommendation from the administration and the Planning Commission can then be forwarded to the City Council. And so there's 4 places in 13.7C-4, there's just 2 notes. You can kind of see it there on lines 32 through 30, I think 38. And these are just notes as part of that C2 section that on certain things, it's only the last special meeting of the month or otherwise scheduled, or it's one application and it has to be 20 days after the Planning Commission has a favorable recommendation. So the council believes from their, they had a work session on the council meeting on the 14th of October. And the consensus of the council was that that portion on this section can be deleted. There's a total of 4 sections, 7C section 4 and section 5 and 7D section 4 and section 5 with similar verbiage. And what the council would like to do is set the timelines within their council policy and procedures where they can, which already specifies that the packet that comes before the council just needs to be a complete packet. So it's got the master development plan, it's got the master development agreement. All of those are ready so that we're not having to necessarily table action, we think it will be actually quicker to go through these processes. So you can see the notes there, and then on 7C5, it's deleting 3 and 4. It just talks about the form being submitted at least 10 days. And then the number 4 above was the 20 days after the Planning Commission recommendation. So suggesting deleting that. And then on 7D4, it's the same notes, removing that. And then 7D5, just deleting number 2 about having the 20 days between Planning Commission and City Council. What it felt like when we were discussing this as a council is that the starting gate seemed to be the Planning Commission recommendation. Then we had 20 days to try and get these partial applications together for the council to make a decision. And we feel the council feels it's more appropriate that the starting gate be when the application is complete, and then it can move through the process. Our hope, the council's hope, is that the Planning Commission would have a full packet for their debate and dialogue and action and recommendation, and the council would receive that same packet for its deliberations, public hearings, and action. So that's the goal of this process here.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions for Alan?
I just got one kind of clarification.
Go ahead.
So none of this really starts until the packet's complete anyway, correct?
Correct. What, as Ray mentioned, there have been occurrences where like an MDA hasn't been completed, but yet it's we're getting it as ready to have public hearing and council action, but we don't necessarily have all the material. The council doesn't have all the material in order to make those decisions. So by removing this section of code, it kind of puts that responsibility on the developer, that if they want to have the council hear their application, the council expects a complete packet, MDAs that are signed, a completed MDP that's been vetted through community development, the Planning Commission, just all of that information. So that's the goal of this. And then the council will address it in its council rules, which already exist, that it's got to be a complete packet before we'll agenda it.
And Alan, if I could just interject, the main applicable council rule that's either already in effect or in a process of being in effect is basically a 10 business day or 2-week rule where the application needs to be complete and agreement signed and everything and to the council like 2 weeks in advance, right? That's kind of the council right now.
Yeah, so it may be helpful for the commissioners to know that on city council public hearings, the council office now sends those notices out. And obviously we still have to maintain that 10-day. Previously, the council, under the old form of government, the council would receive the packets the Friday before council meeting, which gave a Saturday, a Sunday, Monday, and possibly Tuesday, despite work and family, to try and digest an entire packet to make a decision on Wednesday. What the council has been asking, and we in the office are moving this way, is to provide them these packets 2 weeks in advance of the council meeting. And the hope is that this provides the council ample opportunity to read the information, read the packets, ask clarifying questions of staff ahead of time, raise concerns that may be evident, so that when we are at council meeting, the council has all the information that it needs to make a good decision for the city.
Alan, if I'm not mistaken, an example of this being kind of passed along is the Wood Ranch, right? Where they kind of hurried up and we got to a point where we made a decision and it's still dragging out because we were waiting on master development agreements and other things as well. But there was no reason for us to make a decision on that development when we didn't have a completed application. And that's what this is clarifying, right?
Yes, that's a great example, and there's other examples. It's not specific to Wood Ranch,
Yeah,
but
no, I'm not trying to call them
yeah,
out, but that's the one that came to mind.
Yeah, where things have been coming to the council after a recommendation from the planning commission, but not all the pieces are there. It's like here's a puzzle. We've put the border together because that was we had the straight edges. We could do that. We don't really have the middle filled out, but we want you to approve it before the puzzle is complete, if that makes sense. And the feeling of the council is that the planning commission kind of represents the recommendation of administration or the executive branch of government to the planning commission. That's kind of how the council views this, is that when the planning commissioners make a positive or negative recommendation, that is the executive branch's recommendation to the legislative body, who then, either makes some adjustments or approves it or denies it. But it's hard to do that when, like I mentioned with the puzzle, you don't have all those pieces in play. And then you have to continue it to a date uncertain, or you have to continue it to a date certain in the future. And, spend a lot of time, I guess, rehashing and tweaking. And then you find out that once you get the puzzle all put together, that there's different pieces that should be in different places because now you got the center done. So we think it's just going to be cleaner for everyone if we deal with just complete packets all around.
Well, and I think with this combined with what we did in the previous one, this is going to give the applicant more of a time frame that they can depend on, as opposed to, meeting a deadline for this point and then a deadline for that point. Now they're required that when they get everything in, they know I'm going to get it in at this point, and I can have a decision in theory by the end of this point, and it's all very timely, and they know what to expect. And now they're on their responsibility to get this done themselves.
Yes, and go ahead, Larry.
So can I add something, Chair Quinney?
Yeah.
I want the Planning Commission, everyone to know that's listening, that I think there's a semantic issue here. We don't accept incomplete application in the development department. And so a complete application is determined by state law. And what it is it meets zoning requirement, a fee is paid, and they meet all the requirements of the checklist. That's a complete application. In the past, but this is changing now because this council wants to see things much more thoroughly vetted. You were given the information to where you could make a recommendation or a decision. And then, so you would make a recommendation on, for instance, a zone change based upon what you were given. And it was felt that that was adequate information that you could make a positive or negative recommendation to the legislative body. However, the city council is changing, and now they want to see everything completed and done before they look at it, rather than just having enough information to make a decision. They want the whole thing completed, which is not an issue. That's just not the way the operation was done in the past. And so it's, you as a planning commission, you will probably be seeing a lot more of the same thing. Things will be far, far more completed than they were in the past, and probably almost be thoroughly complete before you look at it, before you make a recommendation. Because if the city council is going to not make a decision till the cake is fully baked, then I think that should go with the planning commission too. But I just wanted to clarify that we don't accept incomplete applications, but I think that, it's just semantics, but I have to get that point out there. So
I think it's a good clarification. Under state law, a complete application is just a completely filled out form, a completely paid, fully paid filing fee, and then all the other materials submitted that are required by city code and policy. That's a complete application under state law. So I guess we're talking about a complete packet, which has been determined by the council as what it would like to see to be able to consider and act upon an item, right? Maybe a complete packet.
Yeah, so sorry, I wasn't trying to insinuate that we were getting incomplete stuff. I was saying that we were getting what you were providing us, which was meeting code requirements. I'm just saying now we're going to get a chance to see the whole package, and I feel like this is going to help us make decisions that might stand more in line more frequently with what city council is wanting, as opposed to having these divergences where we look at it and say, yeah, that's great, and then we find out we didn't have the whole piece. I think this is just going to help us be able to work a little bit more cohesively with city council.
And I agree. I think that it will help because you really will become the vetting body of land use decisions. And so basically what you'll look at will be fully done, and then you'll make that recommendation to the city council. And so there probably won't be any alteration between the two bodies. They'll probably be the same thing. Same thing you'll look at will be what the city council look at in the future. So.
Okay. Any other questions, clarifying questions for Alan on this? All right. I didn't do the public hearing on this yet, did I? It's been a minute since we started this, and I think we're still doing public hearing, right, Duncan? Did I do this one yet?
I don't think you did.
Okay.
No, you haven't opened the public hearing, no.
All right. Well, this is our last one. So if you're here to speak on an item tonight, specifically this one, now is your chance. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. All right. Didn't expect anybody, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring this back to Planning Commission for discussion or action.
I have a few thoughts, Chair.
Please.
So, and Alan, maybe could you put that back up on the screen? So the first statement here, and everybody, I think, got an email from Julie.
Oh. Hang on really quick. Alan, hang on really quickly. I just noticed, I don't know who Deanna Hopkins is. Is she public or is she someone with the city? I don't know who she is. Julie?
I don't know who she is, so I will unmute her.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing really quickly just to allow for that. I know that the technology makes the delay a little bit behind.
Do we need a motion to open up public hearing again?
Duncan, what do you think?
Chair can just do it on his own.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open this up. Deanna, it looks like you are unmuted. Please just really quickly tell us who you are and state your address, and then we'll go ahead and give you the floor for 3 minutes.
That was an inadvertent hand raise, so I apologize.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and thank you for your time. We'll go ahead and close that up again and bring that back. Commissioner Allen, go right ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to just bring this up, and maybe it's a question for Duncan. The text amendment that Alan is showing was also emailed to us just prior to this meeting and varies slightly from what's in the packet. Do we need, how do we address that within the motion?
Good point. And I should say that I think Mr. Anderson mentioned the reason for this option B or second version. This second version that's on the screen now is because of the council's work session that they held a week ago. And this proposed version is consistent with what they discussed in their work session a week ago. So, but where it is properly listed on the agenda and it is available to the public, you can vote on it. But in your motion, if you wanted to approve of this version, you should say the updated version that's been discussed during this meeting, which reflects the city council's comments at their work session, something along those lines.
Okay.
Duncan, real quick question. So we can vote on the B?
Yes. Yeah, it's no different than if you have something that's in the packet and you make a few different little word changes during your meeting, you can still vote on it. So, and where this is presented to the public, you can vote on it.
Amy, did you have other thoughts? You said you had a few thoughts and I only heard one.
No, and I appreciate that. That was a good conversation on that one. The other three are very small housekeeping items. Mr. Anderson, for yours, if we end up going with this B, which is what I think we ought to do, we also need to delete the superscript 1 and 2 in the table heading.
That's a good point. Yeah, on both charts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other question I have is when we say soonest available meeting for the council, and we understand that packets are coming out 2 weeks in advance, is that going to fix itself out through the process, or I worry an applicant would come in, see soonest available meeting and think that means the very next city council meeting following the planning commission.
My perspective on my interpretation of soonest available meeting is subject to the council and council staff. If the next meeting is full and there's no time left to put it on, the soonest available meeting is not the next meeting, but 2 meetings later, right? It's if that's the next meeting that has available time on it. So, I mean, if someone thinks that isn't clear and there's better language, they could certainly say something like, up to the discretion of the council or something like that. But I think that the interpretation also of soonest available meeting is that if they're, to give every consideration to not put it off, but to really do it as soon as possible, even though the next meeting may not be available, well then, the next one after that kind of thing. But
I appreciate that. There's nothing anywhere else in code or state otherwise that would suggest what the definition of soonest available is.
Yeah, there's no set definition for it, correct.
Okay. And then the last question I have, very similar to it, we talk about the difference between a complete application and a complete packet. And I'm entirely on board. I love the concept, and that's what we need to move forward with. Do we have or do we need to make a definition of what a complete packet is?
So
we don't use that term here in this ordinance, right?
No, but what we will do is just make sure that all of the requirements of the checklist, which determine that it's a complete application, are fully have gone through the full review of city staff and are ready to proceed, instead of just giving enough information to the planning commission to make a decision. Everything will have to be fully worked out before it even comes to the planning commission now. So, because like I said, a lot of times we move things forward, especially on land use decisions, with enough information that it meets the findings in the ordinance, and that you can make an educated or a very good decision. But it'll be fully complete now, so it'll be more work upon the developer than it was in the past. So
that actually brings up a question I wanted to ask. Ask staff is what kind of impact will this have on developers as the planning commission says, hey, we'd like you to rework this piece or that piece before we forward a recommendation?
I think that, in my opinion, I think it will really help the process. Now, it might seem counterintuitive, but I think that it will make the process smoother, because right now the city council they've started to vet everything because they feel like they don't have all the information, where that really belongs in the court of the planning commission. And so I actually think it will speed up things between the planning commission and city council decisions. Now, it may require more work and it may slow things down getting to a planning commission meeting, but I think by that time, what you have will be fully baked and you'll be able to make an absolute, without a doubt, decision. So.
Thank you.
If anybody doesn't have any more comments, I'll try to make a motion.
Hang on a
That's all
second,
right.
Jay. Alan, Ammon unmuted. Did you have another comment, Ammon, or were you just going to do the same?
I was going to say the same thing, so go
All
for it.
right. Commissioner Thomas, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, I move that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council for this application regarding version B. Would that be all right?
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. I'll second that. Motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Quinney. Any discussion to the motion?
Sure. Can I add something, Chair?
Please.
Why don't you call it Exhibit 1? Because that's what it's titled on the screen. And so there's no doubt that what we're talking about. So,
All right, I'll amend my motion to entertain the Exhibit 1.
I'm okay with that as well. Any further discussion to the motion? Thank you, Mr. Gardner. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Brings us to the conclusion of the public hearings. Anything else from staff for tonight?
I don't have anything, no.
I have one quick question, and then since Alan, you're here, I guess I can ask you directly. The last time you and I spoke, you mentioned that after this meeting, we would be welcome to come back into City Hall, but given the recent changes with the state code, I'm assuming that that's probably not an option, right? We're still going to continue to meet remotely.
So yeah, for right now, the council room is getting some tech upgrades, so it'll be a Zoom room, and those aren't quite completed yet. And we need to check the programming of the new devices. So maybe anticipate that middle of November, but we would need to follow the current guidelines, which would be masks in the council chambers, and we would limit it. There are some city councils elsewhere that are meeting in the council chambers, but they're not closed. They're broadcasting from and streaming from council chambers. They're not open to the public. So I would anticipate that maybe by the end of November, that would be an option that's available to the planning commissioners if you choose to do that.
Okay, well, we've got a month before our next meeting, so we'll stay tuned to hear from either Julie or from Duncan regarding that option. Anything else? All right, I think we've been here long enough, guys. I say we call it a night. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned until November 17th. Go out and vote.
Thank you.
So
Have a good
Pamela,
night.
what's the name of the horse that came up behind you?
Oh my gosh, he's a puppy even.
Thank you.
He's so
Thank you,
big.
commissioners.
He's tired of you ignoring him.
He is. Actually, he's whining to go outside.
Okay.
Okay, see ya.
Thanks.